When CMOs are left out of the boardroom, their insights and the business risks and opportunities that their expertise might identify are lost. Research from Spencer Stuart in 2019 showed that marketers serving as directors on Fortune 1000 company boards remains surprisingly low, with only 26 of the thousands of public company board seats occupied by marketing leaders. And according to exec search firm Korn Ferry in 2021, marketers are still fairly sparse on board seats. Hi, I am Conor Byrne, and this is That's What I Call Marketing. Today, I am joined by somebody who wants to change all that. Sherilyn, Shackell, founder and CEO of the Marketing Academy. It's an international not-for-profit organisation dedicated to inspiring and developing talented stars in the marketing, media and communication industries to become the leaders and influencers of tomorrow. She really believes that these sectors have a unique power to shape our collective opinions as a society. In this episode, we discuss what the Marketing Academy is about and how it is going to reshape the boards of tomorrow. We discuss the different programs it offers to marketers, the impact that it is having on the sector across the markets it operates in, as well as future plans for growth. But we spent a lot of time today talking about what you can do to think about your path, the path that you are on. We talk about positive intent, our own responsibility for our reactions and the energy we expend and share. Sherilyn had a near-death experience and that shaped her now worldview. But it's her desire that no one has to go through that. So no matter what stage you're at in your marketing career, give yourself some time today to listen to some amazing advice from a truly wonderful guest. Sherilyn, thanks a million for joining me on That's What I Call Marketing. Great to have you here.
It's an absolute pleasure. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, listen, we're here to talk all things Marketing Academy. So can I just start with the 2-minute, maybe elevator style pitch of what, for people who don't know, what is the Marketing Academy?
Okay. Well, look, we're a place of development and learning. So we exist to give the emerging leaders and CMOs within our industry all of the capabilities they need to get much, much further in their career. We focus on them being the most exceptional human beings they can be, the most inspirational leaders, the most exceptional marketers. And we do that across 2 programs, the scholarship program for emerging leaders, the fellowship program for brand side CMOs. And we do that in 3 regions. So UK and Europe, the US and Australia. What's unusual about us is that we're a not-for-profit organisation and therefore our programmes are all free. They are highly selective. It's quite hard to get in. And in fact, I heard a stat a few weeks ago that made me really thrilled because we discovered that it's harder to get into the Marketing Academy than it is to get into Harvard and Stanford.
Wow.
Which is really seriously cool. And so obviously I've got huge gratitude to all of the organisations that nominate their talent that, will ultimately go through the selection process to be selected. But the programme is free of charge because honestly, we believe that the kind of learning that we deliver should be something that's a gift to the industry. And also everyone that contributes to the learning, all of our mentors, all of our executive coaches, the incredible speakers, they all give their time to us for free.
Right.
And therefore, if they're gifting us their time, it's just not right to charge off the back of that. So the programs are totally free. The cohorts only have to pay their accommodation. And we do some rather intensive boot camps and residentials. So we've been in the UK now 13 years. We've been in the States for 5. We've been in Australia for 9. And we have a community of just over 1,000 alumni that have been through our programs.
Wow.
And we also run alumni programs for them for each of the programs in each of the territories. So all in all, we're delivering 10 programs. And then 2 years ago, we developed a virtual campus program, which is an online program, which whilst it's not open, it's kind of invitation only for our community, all of the people that gift in to our community. There is an opportunity for anybody that has been made redundant, or is facing career transition to get a golden ticket to enroll on that program. And because of that, we've got over 8,500 people enrolled on a 12-month learning program around leadership, self-mastery and well-being. So that's really cool. And that's only been out for the last 2 years. So if there's any listeners that have been made redundant, you could absolutely get an opportunity to enroll on that program, and the content is amazing.
Amazing.
That's what we do. That's what we do. That's all we do.
That's all you do. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for your time today. But what I find interesting, so you're not a marketer.
No.
Now, you have said, I did hear you say that you think you would have been a good suit. What?
I think I would have gone into agency because our scholarship, the program that we have for the emerging leaders between 10 and 18 years experience. So they're not youngsters, they're emerging leaders. That program covers the whole industry. So marketing, media owners, media agencies and creative agencies. And I'm pretty sure, getting to know them, that had I gone down a different route when I was in my 20s, I would have loved to work in an agency. And I reckon I would have worked kind of client account side. So I'm not a creative at all, although people think I am. I'm not. And my brain doesn't think like that either. But I do think I'd have made a good suit. I reckon I'd have been quite good with the whole client management stuff. So that's the path not taken. But I'm not a marketeer either.
Yeah, and so I want to get to that in a bit about how this came about, right? How you ended up with marketing. But so your background was in, well, a few things, but in recruitment was kind of your headhunting. Am I right? Yeah,
you're absolutely right. From a baby, I was 24 when I fell into that industry, which, given that I'm 58, was a long time ago. And then it was it's not like this anymore, but it used to be quite a brutal, highly commercial, very salesy environment. I didn't really know any different, and I fell into it, and I discovered that I was very good at it, and it is and can be quite a lucrative profession.
Yeah.
And so that was my path. I just got better and better at it and got more and more senior. And then when I was in my early 30s, I bought the company that I was running. So I did an MBO, and I ran that for a good 10 years. So it was quite a successful headhunting firm. And we would do, our clients were most of the really big blue chip type B2C and B2B organizations, and I would work at board level across all of the functions.
Right.
But the ones I'd always try and pinch from my consultants were the ones that were searching for CMOs. So I began my fascination, with the world of marketing through recruiting that kind of talent. We didn't do many because we were very broad, but whenever we did, I would just gravitate towards them, and spending a lot of time interviewing CMOs, I really did learn to understand what power they have available to them. But talking to the CEO clients, I realized that actually the CEOs themselves didn't understand the power that their CMO could bring to them, which used to frustrate me like mad. So I'd often have a conversation with the CEO of an organization saying, look, if your CMO is not in the center of your boardroom, you don't have your customer there. They are the ones that have the heartbeat in the palm of their hands. They know your customer's blood pressure. They know everything. If you don't have them in the boardroom, you're not going to get growth through your customer. And then back then, there weren't very many CMOs that were actually on the boards in the UK. When I launched the fellowship, which is the senior role for CMOs that we run, there were only at that time 3 board level CMOs in the FTSE 100.
Really?
So all of the FTSE have CMOs, but only 3 of them were actually on the main boards.
Right.
And I just couldn't get my head around it. And the whole industry was beating a drum back then because the CMO was just underestimated. And therefore, the function of marketing was underinvested in. And I had a real problem with that. So that's kind of where my real interest in marketing specifically really first started to raise its head. And then once we'd launched the academy and I really got to understand Adland and the media world, then that interest just, got expanded exponentially. And, you know, I realized that this is the place that I need to be, and this is the work we need to be doing.
I do find it fascinating. And sorry, I say this then when my own background is not directly in marketing. I was in hospitality and nonprofit. So I kind of found my way into it as well. But like how you were just so drawn to it. I mean, I think obviously a huge entrepreneurial background in your family. I know your mom was an entrepreneur in the sense of owning shops, and you then had your own business. But what was it about the marketing piece that you were drawn to? Were you just interested in the conversations? I'm just really curious. I find it fascinating.
I was interested in the impact and influence, right? So here's actually what happened. I've been running my search firm for 10 years. And I never recognized in that time that I was actually very unhappy. So I had an illness that happened when I was 42. That nearly killed me overnight, and the recovery of it, which is obvious because I'm here, the recovery led me down a path of reflection and introspection.
Okay.
And I had to begin to admit to myself that actually, in that career I had, whilst I was good at it and made money at it, was highly successful monetarily.
Right.
The life I was living through the choices that I was making was not the best it could be, and had actually been taken apart in manifesting my illness. And I really did take it as a big universal wake-up call for me. And I had already had the fire of leadership development being a passion, was already lit. Because whilst I was running my search firm, I was also on the board of a leadership development company whose program is actually embedded now in the scholarship. They're called the Living Leader. And the journey I went on with them, going through their program and then going through the Train the Trainer of this leadership development program, really lit this passionate flame about developing other leaders. So I was already there at that point when I got ill. The recovery from the illness, and I was still running my search firm leading into the recession. Since 2008, I was ill. 2009, the world went to pieces.
Yeah.
And I knew, all I knew was that I was passionate about leadership. When I was talking or doing any kind of leadership development, I was absolutely in flow and loved every second of it. When I was doing recruitment, when I was leading a search, when I was pitching to companies to get searches, I was never at my best then. And I was incredibly stressed, held a huge amount of anxiety, was running quite a big firm, and working every hour God sent. I was on that, I often call it the treadmill of doom. I was on that treadmill that I had achieved a certain level of success.
Yeah.
Only in monetary and material terms. So, you get a bigger house, you get a nicer car, you start going on nicer holidays, and then you get terrified that you're going to lose it because it feels really good. So that means you have to work even harder because of the fear that comes in that you're going to lose it, that you're going to fail, that you're going to fuck it up, that you're going to be homeless, and you work even harder and harder and harder. So the money doesn't bring you happiness, and can, if you make the wrong choices, bring harm. And to me, that's what happened. Working those hours, holding that amount of stress and worry, hardly ever seeing my husband, never seeing my kids.
Right.
I just wasn't the best person I should be. So in the recovery of the illness, I really had to figure out if I needed to change my life, which I did, and I didn't want to be a headhunter, which I didn't, what the hell else was I going to do? And all I knew at that point, and going through that bit of the journey, I don't like that word journey, but I did go on a bit of a journey, is that I was passionate about leadership. I was passionate about developing other leaders. And I knew that really powerful leadership could have the biggest impact in the world. And so there were a number of different situations that happened in a very short period of time that ultimately led to the curation of what the Marketing Academy would be. And a lot of people were involved in that with me. But the bottom line is, I honestly couldn't think of another function like marketing, another function or another industry like media and advertising that literally has influenced over 7.5 billion people on the planet.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't think of another. There's no other industry or function combined, function within a company or the industry of advertising, media owners, etc., that had that amount of influence. And therefore, I knew I wanted to do something that was non-commercial. That was part of my recovering from all of it. I wanted to run a business that was for good, and therefore it needed to be a not-for-profit or a charity. And I wanted it to be in the industry or sector that would literally make the biggest impact in the world. And that was going to be marketing, media, and advertising. I could have put the Academy in Finance. It could have been the Finance
Academy
or the Procurement Academy. Or in industries, it could have been the Sports Academy or the Catering Academy or the Hospitality Academy.
Yeah.
Because what we then ultimately develop could fit in any function and in any industry. But it was important to me that if I was going to bring together all of these incredible, very senior, very seasoned business leaders and ask for their time for free to develop talent, I wanted their time and energy and wisdom to be expended on those who could make the biggest influence in the world. And therefore, it had to be the Marketing Academy. And that's what I'd learned about the power of marketing through being a headhunter.
Amazing. So a question for you at that time, because that's obviously a hugely important period, for lots of reasons, but did you think of going into the not-for-profit sector and actually saying, well, so you've created a not-for-profit organization, but did you ever think of actually I could just bring that leadership to non-profit organizations?
Yes, I did. In that I considered quite early on that if I wasn't achieving my purpose through the job that I was doing, that I would get involved in the charity and not-for-profit sector, like as a trustee or a non-exec. And I sought some of those, but we were bang smack in that recession.
Yeah.
So they were all bleeding, and many of them were closing down, and I couldn't find an NED role or a trustee role that would fit what I felt I could contribute at that time. But I did look, I really did. I sought them out and I couldn't find them. And then I thought, well, I can't, because I thought it would need to be around leadership or around developing young talent. I just couldn't find any. So, and so I thought, well, I'll set one up. And to be honest, it was 2 years before I closed my search firm, because that was providing me with income. And for the first 2 years, the Academy was a real passion project. And so I funded most of it in terms of funding all of the resource that went into it, until we hit the stage where we were attracting the sponsors, because it's 100% sponsor funded. And then we took the Academy, then we launched the fellowship and took the Academy to Australia around about the same time. By that time, we'd hit critical mass and awareness that we were able to quite regularly attract sponsorship income.
Right.
And at that point, the Marketing Academy could afford to invest in a CEO. And fortunately, I got the job.
How did the interview go?
Yeah, it was interesting. I have a fantastic board. Many of them have been with me for 13 years. They came on board before we even launched, and they've always been massively supportive. But closing my search firm was obviously a really big decision, because, as I said, it's very lucrative. But I had to just learn to let that go. I'm privileged that I was in the position that I could take, quite a big cut in income, and I'm really fortunate with that. So that's like a blessing I have that enabled me to be able to make the choices I made, that I was going to live, quite a different, we as a family, because I've always been the breadwinner, we as a family could live, a good enough life. Yeah. I remember my husband saying, when I first said, look, I'm going to close the business, we'll probably never be rich again. At the time, we're living in a 6-bedroom house. I mean, seriously, it's ridiculous. And he literally said, how many rooms do we need? We can be in one room at a time. It's okay. That was after I picked him up off the floor. Obviously, I needed to bring him round to the concept just a little bit. But he said to me, is this going to make you happy? And I said, yes, it is. And he said that I'm right there. I'm right with you. It was remarkable. And so, I consider myself utterly, I was privileged to have been in that situation at that time. I continue to be privileged because I'm living my best life. I'm living my purpose. I found my purpose in everything that the Academy is. And it's a joy and a blessing and a privilege every single day to be able to work with these incredible, talented people all over the world. It's just a gift.
It's amazing to have, that moment. And again, not something that you would ever wish on somebody to go through what you went through, in terms of your health and, really how bad that clearly was. But to have that, I guess, ability. I met with Vanessa Sawyer, who has an influencer marketing agency called Get Stuff Done. And during COVID, she had a very similar, she was on ventilators and, she came out of the other side and she's like, she wanted to do something that had a purpose. And I think, the word purpose, I don't want to use it in a trite way, isn't it?
It's so overused, but it still says what it is. I think. And I can imagine what she went through, because I remember thinking during the recovery and at the point where we got so really excited about developing the strategy for what the Marketing Academy was going to be. And when we began to deliver their learning, I was adamant that no one should ever need a life-threatening situation or real adversity or real trauma or loss to be able to step back and think about how they want to live their life. And unfortunately, we do live our lives in this very automated way, where we're literally just putting one foot in front of the other and we get on that treadmill. And then when we're on that treadmill, really hard to step off it and look at it and be honest with yourself and really examine what it is that's going to give you joy. And what it is that's going to, set your heart alight, and what it is that's going to make an impact, and what it is that you do that might leave a legacy, and what it is that you might have a good impact on the world. We're just thinking, oh my, within our industry particularly, especially in the agencies that I often feel are so overworked. There's such a huge amount of stress.
Yeah.
It's getting a bit better now, but over the last decade, I've seen our scholars on their knees, working until 1 o'clock in the morning on a pitch. And therefore nobody's ever got the time or the instigation, or the moment to go, I've got to take a breath. And what we do with all of our cohorts is we're creating an environment where they can take that breath and really examine, who they are, why they are who they are, what choices they've made and why they've chosen them, the beliefs they've hold and why they believe them, and, the behaviors and choices they're making. We enable them to go through that thought process, because we don't want people to have had to. I've spoken to so many people that have had literally a life-changing experience. And you think, like I felt, oh my God, if I'd gone through this thinking 10 years ago, the Academy would be in 20 countries by now, because I would have had more energy, more, there would have been so much more. And so when we design the scholarship and the fellowship programs and the alumni programs, we're endeavoring to create that life-changing moment.
Without it being a life-threatening moment.
Without it being a traumatic experience in any context. So anybody can do that.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. If someone's listening today going, yeah, but I'm not on the scholarship or the fellow, whatever. But what could somebody do to kind of have that pause, like that break, and ask themselves a question like that? Because I think you're right. Like, it's so important. And I think being able to understand who who you truly are, like what your core beliefs are. I think that's, for me, like I've done that, and it's like one of the most important things I've done, because you question yourself, and should I be this way? But yes, be your core, be yourself, right? And so what advice would you have for somebody? Is there something they could do tomorrow morning that would help them kind of go and, right, who am I? Big question.
Well, I think there is. I mean, it needs a little bit of thought and preparation. The first thing you've got to do is carve out time, right? And even that can be hard, right? Because if you've had a really heavy week, the last thing you want to do on a weekend is sit on a mountaintop somewhere and internalize, right? So it's hard, hard to do. But there's a couple of different things that we encourage the scholars to do. So the first thing is around your mindset, right? Because we're very often become, I hate to use this word, but I haven't found a better word. We've quite often become victims. Mm-hmm. And many times of our own choices, but our brains don't like to accept that. And therefore, we kind of shift the blame outside of us, right? So we'll start to go, oh, I'm absolutely exhausted. I've done so many meetings this week, and, my boss is on my back all the time, and I'm really stressed and frustrated. And that's their fault, right? It's my company's fault, it's my boss's fault, or it's my team's fault, it's my client's fault. Very easy to do that, because we don't like to be held, we don't like to hold ourselves accountable. But the truth of the matter is, you've got 100% responsibility available in real terms for every single decision and choice you make. But we don't often think about the choices we're making because they're automatic. I often speak with my scholars and go, how many meetings have you got in a week? And they'll go, 35. And I'll literally say, why the fuck are you accepting so many meetings? Why are you doing that? And here's the thing, just on that, we accept meetings that are driven from anything other than the need to be there, usually. We accept a meeting because FOMO, right? We think we're going to miss out on something. We'll attend a meeting because we think that will look good, which is ego, right? That's I'm going to go to that meeting because it will make me look good. That's ego or pride. I'm going to go to that meeting because I'm absolutely not sure that the people working under me are good enough to do that meeting on their own. That's selfishness. So you've really got to, you can just think about your mindset and start to challenge yourself on some of the choices that you're making. Do I really have to be at that meeting? Am I really going to add value to that meeting? Could it actually be quite empowering for my team to hold that meeting on their own? In that, do I trust them? Great leaders trust everyone around them and think that they're better than they are, right? So you can start to just think that little bit differently and start to understand that when anything happens to you, you have a choice in the way in which you respond to it, right? It's a gap. It's a moment of time. Something happens to you, your boss asks you to do something, you should get a shitty email from someone, and you'll go, oh my God, that person just made me feel angry. Yeah. Because she wrote that on that email. Well, no, she didn't make you feel angry. You haven't got a button that says press this button and it will make me angry. You've chosen that your response to it will be anger. That's a choice. Let it go. Because you could choose to think, well, she's only sent that shitty email because something really horrible might have happened to her this morning. Right? It's a choice. So mindset and challenging your mindset, I think, is important. Journaling, I think, is very important. Another tip that we give to the scholars is to hold gratitude journals.
Oh, yeah.
I used to think was a little bit woo-woo and, tree huggy-ish. But actually, there's obviously been studies done, and Harvard's done a mini MBA on happiness. And there are studies done about the fact that if you, at the end of the day, before you go to sleep, you write down in a journal just 3 or 4 things that day that you're truly, truly grateful for, you will wake up in a psychologically much more positive mood than if you don't have that. Which is remarkable, but makes complete sense when you think about it. And what's also brilliant about journaling what you're grateful for is that also works on your mindset, because what happens then, if you get into the discipline of having to do it, you start to look for things that you're grateful for, right? So instead of looking for all the things that wind you up, You can start looking for things like how the barrister smiled at you when they gave you your coffee in the morning, or how beautiful the sunset was, or that one tiny little conversation that you had with the boss that's actually usually adversarial, and actually they said something really quite nice. Those are the things that you begin to see, you begin to look for them. So that can help with mindset, just to alleviate the pressure of all of the stress and anxiety that we tend to hold. If you're in a place of stress and anxiety, it's really hard to step back and explain everything that's going on in your life. So once you've worked on that a little bit, is literally carving out time to, quite literally, if possible, sit on a mountaintop on your own and think about, right, here's the biggest tip I can give you. There are books about this now, and it's called Ikigai, which the whole Purpose Brigade repurposed as a kind of a purpose-led Venn diagram, right? Mm-hmm. So Ikigai, which was created by these Japanese people off the coast of Japan, the happiest place on earth, and the place that's got the highest proportion of over 100-year-olds. They live by this Japanese philosophy of Ikigai, which basically means that things in your life are things that you're absolutely brilliant at, things that can give you an income, so they feed you, things that are really good for the world, and the things that you love. All right, so what you love, what you're brilliant at, what you get paid for, what's good for the world. And if you can find things in your life that hit those four quadrants, anybody that Googles this will see the Venn diagram show up and lots of iterations of it. But it's all from this ancient philosophy of Ikigai. And you can literally use that framework to ask yourself the questions that will lead to the answers. So, I'll give you 4 examples. So what do I love? So that would be, what am I doing or talking about that fills me with joy?
Yeah.
And that might be more than one thing, right?
Yeah.
So what am I good at? That might be, because we're rubbish at thinking about.
I was going to say, that's hard, isn't it, for people?
Really hard.
Yeah.
So let's flip that. What do people come to me for when they're asking advice? What do people tell me my superpowers are? What are the things that I regularly get in appraisals or when I'm being appreciated that I'm really good at? That will help inform that, right? So what do I love? What am I really good at? What do I get paid for? Well, that's your job, usually. But you can also start exploring whether there are things that you're good at and that you love that you could turn into a side hustle that might make you a little bit more income, right, and ultimately might be a career path for you. But if you're examining where you're working, what your job you're doing, you've got to think about what gives me joy in that job. So when I'm in the job, am I in flow? Do I forget to eat when I'm doing my work, right?
And not because you have 35 meetings.
Yeah, and that's the stuff that you're probably really good at and also are loving.
Yeah. And
that might include the company, the job that you're doing now in the company that you're now working for, and it might not. And you've got to be open enough to explore that. And then what's good for the world? This doesn't need to be very heavy, right? And I think a lot of people get confused with what that means. And they automatically mean that if I'm seeking something that's good for the world, then I've got to go and work for a not-for-profit, or my business has to be social purpose led, and it might. But there's lots of other things that are good for the world that might be in your life. It doesn't all have to be in one thing. You might be... you might have a hobby that brings other people joy. So, for example, if your hobby is artwork, creating artwork, if you start putting that out, that will bring joy to other people. That's good for the world, right? And there aren't many companies that don't offer some sort of product or service that's good for the world in some context. Yeah. So people immediately think, oh, well, that's it then. If I work for a cigarette company, there's no way can I meet that purpose need. Well, yeah, you can, because actually... they grow tobacco leaves in some of the poorest countries in the world, and a cigarette manufacturer will be supporting those farmers. So you have to dig deep on this stuff. But when you do, there's a lot of things that everybody is doing that's ultimately good for the world. But when you look at it, when you stand back and you look at it, and you fill those sort of 4 quadrants with lots of different things, the key then is to look to see whether there's any connections across the 4 areas, because if there are connections across all 4, the theory is that you've then discovered your purpose.
Okay.
I'm not convinced about that, if I'm completely honest. And what we say to our scholars is, so long as you've got things going on in your life in all 4 quadrants and you have the balance right, need to be one thing. It doesn't need to be all in one job. It could be a job that actually you don't like very much, but it's paying your bills because actually
you're getting all the other stuff.
Yeah, you're spending a load of time on the stuff that gives you joy. So that's a framework that's sort of out in the ether that you can use, and it's one that we teach in the scholarship, and it just allows people that time to step back and ask yourselves the honest question: why am I here?
Yeah.
What am I here for? What am I going to love? Why I'm here? What legacy am I going to leave?
Yeah.
It isn't hard. It's just not necessarily simple.
Yeah. My very, very first guest for this podcast was John Goldstone, and he talked about this he's brilliant.
He was one of our first ever mentors for the scholarship.
Was he?
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me. 'Cause, like, honestly, John. So I've done a bit of work with John, and he's forever available. If I ask John a question, he's just one of them. Just such a wonderful person. But he talked about being somewhere where you can do great work and stuff that you're proud of, and so it's kind of similar to that, like finding the energy, what is it, when you're getting up in the morning. Look, every day I think has different parts to it, and there's things you're going to just not love doing, and that's life, right? Like,
and it's okay so long as you're filling your cup somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. So finding those things that are the balance. There's going to be the budget meeting that's not going to be fun, but the creative meeting might. And so, if that's your day, then that's okay.
A really good tip I'll share with you from one of our faculty. So he talks at all of the scholarships, and he's one of my Aussie scholarship alumni. And then went and set up a business which is all about energy management. And the really good tip that he gives is, if in your day there's going to be people that Sean would call emotional vampires or mood hoovers. I call them dementors. There's people that like suck the living lifeblood out of you, and that you've got a meeting with one of those people in the day. A tip is to bookend it with a meeting or just a conversation with someone who fills your cup, with someone who gives you joy. Just bookend it, like a 30-second conversation with your best mate before you go into that meeting. And then the other tip he gives is, and that we build on throughout the program, is that if somebody is behaving in a way, I don't believe that anybody wakes up in the morning to be an emotional vampire or a mood hoover or it's going to make your life a living hell. I don't honestly believe anybody wakes up in the morning thinking and feeling that. Yeah. And so if they're showing up like that, and it's often, there's going to be things going on for that person that you have no idea about. And so the first way to counter it is to think of them with empathy and compassion. Hard to do when they're being a dick, right? It's hard to do. But you've really got to understand that nobody wants to be like that. Yeah. And there may well be even bigger emotional vampires in that person's life that might go into their whole life, their home life, as well, that you won't know about. So if you're showing up with somebody and they're constantly being like that, a question could be, you look a little bit depleted today. What can I do to help you?
Right.
Which is very different from sitting in front of them feeling and behaving quite hostile, because they're going to be. So, you can think about those in different ways. The whole philosophy of managing energy in and out is phenomenal, and you can utilize it in any area of your life.
Yeah, and I agree with that. The positive intent, assume positive intent. I agree with you. I don't think anybody intends, or wakes up in the morning going, I have a meeting at 11. I'm going to be absolutely horrible, because who does that? And so being able to reverse the perception you have, and just kind of, like you say, what is that? What could possibly be going on for that person? And make up the craziest worst case scenario, and maybe that's what it is. And and
then you will think about them differently.
Yeah.
Even if nothing changes with them, you will think about them differently. And if you're thinking about them differently, you'll respond and behave a bit differently.
Yeah.
Because if you're thinking of them as a dick and an arse and your expectation is that they're going to make your life hell in this meeting, that's exactly what's going to happen. Because your brain will be seeking affirmation that your beliefs about them are true.
Yeah.
So change your belief about them. And then you'll seek affirmation that those are true. And you'll get a completely different outcome.
Where did this, and seems very important to the Marketing Academy programs that you run, is actually these bits. It's not necessarily like we haven't once spoken about marketing.
I know we do cover it. We do. It's about. Let me think. So obviously, one big area of the scholarship and the fellowship is mentoring, right? So our scholars, the emerging leaders, will spend time with the CEOs of the ad agencies, the CEO of the media owners, and the CMOs in the brand. So they get a lot of input from them. They get a lot of input about life stuff as well.
Yeah.
But, if they've got some sort of challenges that they're facing that's very specific to something that mentor has had a career spike in, and then that's likely to, the output of that is likely to be a little bit more transactionally around the skill and the craft. And then probably about 25% of the programming of the learning within the boot camps and the boot camps for the scholars will be marketing experts. So, our faculty includes people like Mark Ritson and Rory Sutherland. And, we had the one with Daryl Fielding talking about her recent book on brand at the scholarship. So just last week. So there's about 20 to 25% is about the art and the science and the skill of marketing. But it's challenging for us to do that because of the diversity within a room of scholars, given that we're going to have strategists, planners, creatives, and suits from within the agencies. And then in the marketers, we're going to have social media experts, so we're going to have brand experts, we'll have strategists, but in brand. So it's actually quite difficult to deliver a huge amount of marketing content when they're in a plenary group, because we need the learning to hit the broadest number of the 30 scholars that are in the room. Where they get the real insight, and I can already see it playing out on the WhatsApp group for this most recent cohort, is they get it from each other, right? That never can you get that kind of community of 30 together across the entire industry without ego, without pride, without competitiveness, completely open and transparent across all industries, sometimes even competing companies, and share their craft, their ideas, their solutions with each other.
Yeah.
So they learn a massive amount on the scholarship from each other around marketing. But it's the area that I don't teach on, because I don't know, not marketer, can't add any value at all. I can add shitloads of value to a lot of other areas, but not when it comes to marketing. But it's very important.
And then the fellowship is structured slightly differently, because I know like you were talking about the selection criteria and then how you actually almost build the cohort. Can you talk that through?
Yeah, so the two programs are different, and the selection process on the two are different. So very quickly, the fellowship is designed for brand side CMOs only. So we unfortunately cannot include the agencies. Very difficult at that level, because we have to get them being so open and transparent about every area of their life.
Right.
And we can't legislate for having a CMO and their own agency in that room. And we don't want to put pressure on either side to be really open. So unfortunately, I might create another one at this level for agencies. I just need somebody to pay for it, but I know exactly what that might look like. The fellowship program is designed to get CMOs onto boards as CEOs, ultimately as CEOs, or bigger, broader, higher impact roles at board. So that the whole curriculum is designed. So there's no marketing content whatsoever in the fellowship.
Right.
The selection process is slightly different. With the scholarship, they have to be nominated first, and then they get invited to apply. And when they get invited to apply, they've then got to provide three parts of an application: their CV, an endorsement from their employers to explain, how they think and feel about that individual, and that they support them going on the program and why they should get a place. And then they have to produce a 2-minute showcase me. So in the UK, the showcase me is in any medium of their choosing. Okay. So it could be as small as a a face to mobile phone camera just talking about themselves for 2 minutes, or it can be a very elaborate physical, tactical showcase, of which over the years we've had some incredible ones, that they believe sum up who they are, what they want to bring, and why they want to place on the program. And then they go through a 2-stage selection process in interviews. So the first is what we call the pitch interview, half an hour with one of our alumni, with a scripted question from the interviewer, so that everybody's asked exactly the same questions. And then if they get through that stage, they then go to a face-to-face interview with 2 panel members. And they're hour long, between hour and 90 minutes we schedule for those meetings, which is a very deep dive by 2 people, one of which is likely to be an HR expert, and one will be likely to be an agency or marketing leader, CMO or CEO. And so there's it's very competitive in all 3 countries now. It's really competitive. But we do get feedback that the selection process itself enables people to think more deeply about themselves. So we tend to get good feedback from those that unfortunately haven't made it in. And we have a high proportion that will apply multiple times. Because more often than not, they're not on the program because we may feel it's the wrong year for them, or they're not quite there. There's a certain pivot point that you should be at. You should really be just at that point where you're going to really swing out wide. And that's a good pivot point. But there's lots and lots and lots of different reasons why they're not selected. And sometimes it's not anything to do with them, because as I said, we have to curate that cohort. So we look at diversity in its broader sense of the word, in context. And, we have to ensure that that's fitting within that cohort. So, we haven't got to just look at the basics of, gender and race and sexuality. Well, no, we don't look at sexuality, although it does come up. But we also look at sectors, industries, type of business, corporate or SME or not-for-profit or charity or entrepreneurial, and then curate a cohort. And our idea around curating the cohort really is, if we couldn't get a single speaker to a boot camp, could those 30 scholars create a learning experience that's even better than we can create?
Okay, wow.
Because of the breadth of their learning. And that also applies to the fellowship, the CMO fellowship. So they have it's a less onerous selection process because there's less of them, right? It's only one per company. And so we asked them to do an application, a 12-page application form with a couple of essays, their CV, and they're also asked to do an employer's endorsement. And then we shortlist to interview, to have a meeting with a member of the selection panel, so that we can then curate the final cohort. And the maximum class size is 25. In fact, we've never had 25. Our maximum class size has been 24. And actually the sweet spot for the CMO program is about 20.
Right, okay.
So it's, again, very selective, and we've got to look at, the types of businesses that they're in, because we need to design the curriculum around the cohort, much more so on the fellowship than we need to do on the scholarship. But, if the curriculum doesn't land on the fellowship with every single CMO in that room, we've failed.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure that cohort is, we've got the ability to be able to deliver them all what they need. And we have to think about that very carefully.
How do you think about scale then? Because, it's such a tight selection criteria, rightly so. But I think part of this as well is you want to get this to as wide an audience as possible over time. But how do you think about the scale? I guess you've gone into new markets.
There's 2 areas around the scale. So we've only grown geographically, organically, right? We never said there's a pin in Australia, that's a flag, we want to go there.
Okay.
We were led there by mentors and scholars that had gone there, and who were phoning us saying the Marketing Academy should be in Australia. And if you come to Australia, we'll help you find sponsorship, and we'll help you find partners, and we'll help you find coaches, and we'll help you find mentors. And so we've always just kind of listened to that and followed that. so it's in Australia. So it was about 7 or 8 of our community being alum, or mentors that had gone down there and all saying the same thing. And I just thought, shit, the universe is telling us something, and we've got to follow it. So we did. And then the US was one of our big sponsors. Literally phoned me and said, "How do you feel about bringing it to the States?" And I went, "Oh, I haven't." I haven't considered it yet. That's a huge ask, and all of my natural limiting assumptions are coming up to the fore. They're not gonna like it. It's not invented here. They won't buy into it. They blah blah blah. And then she literally said, "Look, we'll underpin it from a funding perspective. If you can't get sponsors, we need it here. You should bring it."
Wow.
And so we went, all right then, and we did. My actual personal desire is to have them everywhere. I would love, so places of particular interest would be Middle East.
Okay.
I would really love to bring it to somewhere like Abu Dhabi or Dubai, run it out of Abu Dhabi or Dubai for the UAE, so that we can help develop up the Emirati or indigenous, like the Saudi talent or the Abu Dhabi talent, that are not getting developed because most of the people at the very top are expats.
Yeah.
And they bugger off and go home. So, but they don't have time to develop the talent underneath them. So that's a very attractive area for me. Latin America, I think, could be interesting. South Africa could be interesting. But APAC is our big swing out at the moment. So it's launching the APAC Fellowship Program, which we will actually run out of Australia, but will cover the whole region. And the residentials will be in Sydney, Singapore, and Tokyo, Japan. Okay. That's the first time that we've ever gone into a new region, the new region being wider Asia, with the fellowship first, not the scholarship first. So our theory is if we get 20 very senior influential CMOs from across that region, then maybe we will be able to build relationships or tweak interest to take the scholarship out there. Now, the scholarship will be in each country. Scholarship couldn't be regional because you have to have mentors, coaches, speakers, all in the same geography. But that could be a huge opportunity for us. And then the other opportunity, and it's a really big one if we get this right, is the virtual campus program. Right. Because we were stunned. We designed it at the back end of the pandemic, really for our alumni, because we couldn't get our alumni together enough in each of the countries. I mean, I was banned from Australia. I couldn't go to Australia for 2 years. Yeah. So we could do very little in person, but we could deliver virtually, and we got really good at it. So we decided that we would, for our alumni, the 1,050 of them, that we would curate 12-month rolling program of ongoing learning, inspiration, there's some humorous stuff on there, make them laugh, well-being, they can do yoga on the virtual campus, for example. And then because they all loved it so much, we said, look, it doesn't cost us any money to have more people enrolled on the platform. So, you can all enroll members of your teams. And then we said to our sponsors that year, for the first time, how do you feel about us giving you shitloads of places to enroll members of your team to be able to experience the Marketing Academy learning? And so it became a massive value add to our sponsors because we'd never been able to do that before. Right. And now, then we decided that we would give it out to people who've been made redundant or, out of role or in transition in Europe, the States and Australia. And that's why, we were stunned that we hit 8,500 this year. And that is a very scalable program. We could have 1 million people on that program. And honestly, if we could find the funding, I would have 1 million people on that. I would give it to the whole industry as the biggest gift the industry could ever have. Totally free learning at a world-class level around leadership, self-mastery, professional skills, and well-being. I just got to get it funded. And so that could be, as we go in our direction of travel, the virtual campus could be the thing that enables us to impact at massive scale, which we were never about. Our theory was and still is, if we invest this time in the scholars and the fellows at the level that they're at, given the types of businesses they're in and the scope and scale and influence that they have as individuals, then the ripple effect within the industry will be enormous.
Yeah.
So we stuck with that until the pandemic. And then we start to think, actually, there is a way that we can deliver some of this at scale. We could never do this and never would do the scholarship and fellowship at scale. It is really exclusive and it'll always remain exclusive. But the virtual campus, that's not the same.
And amazing.
Very different.
Yeah. And I think you're right. That point about the ripple is really important, I think, because the impact that people can have in roles they're in, you know, with teams they have, and if people have had these opportunities to have the moment, you know, it's incredible, I think, how that can change. Can I ask you a question? And maybe the virtual academy is one of the things that would address that. But how do you think about kind of the diversity of the industry and, you know, people in it, and how maybe it can be better? Because, you know, my sense is that it's quite narrow, you know, the types of people that are in ad agencies and clients, they kind of tend to look and sound the same quite often.
All right, so let's be really straight here, right? The diversity of talent across race is absolutely hideous in marketing, media, and advertising. We are predominantly white, middle class, privileged, and have been to university. I didn't understand that when I first launched the academy. It wasn't a thing. I didn't even think about it. And I didn't know the industry well enough to know it was the truth. And it was only really in about year 2 or 3, I started to think, God, they all look the same. They were all fabulous. I mean, I love all of my scholars, but, you know, they all look the same. And we just weren't getting diverse, specifically diverse. Gender diversity, we've always got really great talents in, but very rarely do we get the diversity within race, ethnicity. We get diversity in sector, we actually get a huge amount of diversity across LGBTQ. I mean, it's such a wonderful industry for that. But diversity of colour in the UK, atrocious. Right. Superb in the US. Like, they've been working on this in the US so brilliantly for decades, which means that the investment systemically in the schools around this to encourage, support, shine the spotlight, provide role models in ethnic minority communities in the States has been amazing. So it is never an issue in our cohorts it's not never an issue. It's always going to be a bit of an issue, but it's much better in the States. In the UK, it's been really bad. And so we do a lot of work to seek out groups that can help us build awareness, so that the awareness of the academy doesn't just stay within a bubble, because it ain't right. You just in the bubble. That's why we all recruit to type. We talk to our own bubble. You know, we're not going out, and we do work very hard to try and touch, you know, much wider communities. So that's a really big thing that we do. And then the last thing, we set up a charity for justice at a systemic level. So the Academy Foundation provides for young people to get jobs, fully paid salaried jobs in marketing, media, and advertising. And, you know, they are young, they are from very poor communities, or socioeconomically poor environments, challenging backgrounds. And that's getting real diversity across every context into our industry at a very systemic level. They're 18 or 20. So we did that because we knew that the industry needed it. And since then, there's been lots and lots of others. We set that up quite a while ago, but there's now some fantastic organizations working in this space that are going to feed talent into both marketing and advertising.
And so I think it's really important in lots of ways, but I think, you know, people seeing those opportunities as for them, you know, and because this talent is there, right? And just, you know, it's so
there. It's so there. And if you've had, you know, if you've faced adversity, you know, in childhood and in teen, you've faced real adversity, real challenges. The skill set and the different thinking is profound. You know, they're much more resilient, you know, than the slightly more privileged young people are. You know, they see more, they have to fight more, you know, they're more they're just as ambitious, and they're just as intelligent. They weren't able to get their parents to fund them a place at university.
Yeah.
But the intelligence level and the IQ is no different at all. So, we're quite passionate about developing talent at that level across, we're not just talking about racial diversity here. We're really talking about the diversity that you get in the young people that don't even have the education that we might be privileged to have. And that's really important. It's a real hobby horse of ours.
And it will require people that are passionate about it to change it and address it. Before we end, what over the 13 years, what are the changes you've seen for the better and for the industry and CMOs?
Loads, actually. I mean, point one would just literally be that the CMOs are now far more regarded as absolutely intrinsically linked to the growth of businesses. Mm-hmm. Well, win. That's taken over. That's taken over a decade, but that's happening, and their roles are much, much broader. The fellow program in the earlier days would attract people that wouldn't get in, but would attract people with really quite narrow roles to apply. So, just brand and comms exclusively, right. Brand and comms. Now it's so their roles are now so much wider because of, they're now part finance and part IT, right? Because they're the data owners a huge amount of the time.
Yeah.
So, they've gone from brand and comms to now brand, comms, data, technology. The tech stack used to sit with the IT guy. It doesn't anymore because everything about their stack is to do with, marketing. The whole, proliferation of social media has changed their roles beyond belief. And therefore, their roles have just got bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, there's a challenge in that because that means that the skill set and capabilities have to catch up.
Yeah. Because,
you can give your CMO all of this extra stuff, but unless they don't have to be experts in any of it. But, they've got to be really, really good leaders to be able to navigate that because you're literally leading very different types and styles of people. And they're now leading people in jobs that didn't exist 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think that's really positive. I think the world of marketing and advertising and media now is really exciting. God knows what AI is going to do for us. We're doing around that at the moment because there aren't very many experts out there, right? There's a lot of people talking about it. There's a lot of people pretending they're experts, but there aren't because they haven't had long enough yet. So we're really working to get the real experts that, originally got involved in the designing of it, and we're very close. But, the social, let alone economic impact of the functionality that AI is going to give us and VR is immense. And I'm not sure anybody at the moment can really put their arms around what that will mean.
Yeah.
But I think the challenge of what that means will sit with the marketers first and the agencies first.
Yeah.
So a very, very exciting time now. Many, many more CMOs becoming CEOs than what used to happen. A little bit more development, investment in talent in both marketing and Adlan now. And as I said, a huge more support to get real diversity of thinking into our industry now. It was talked about it for a long time. And then over the last 5 or 6 years, we're actually now seeing the doing
of
it. So very exciting. I think that it cannot be a more exciting time to be in this industry now.
I agree. It's a wonderful place to be. I think we're very lucky. As you think back, you mentioned earlier on when, you were working as your headhunter exec search agency and you didn't have a lot of time. Am I right? You've 3 daughters, am I right?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. How much time do you get to spend with them now?
No, I don't spend a huge amount. I don't spend a huge amount more with them because I travel so much. But there is a very big difference. Yeah, the biggest difference is that when I was at home prior to the Marketing Academy, I wasn't at home in my head.
Gotcha.
And therefore I wasn't at home with
present.
focusing on them. And now, because the academy fills me with so much joy, there is just less stress and anxiety around it. When I am at home, I can be at home.
Be home.
And I learned to, it was tough learn, but I did learn to be able to really switch off and be with them in a quite mindful way. I still have to work at it, if I'm completely honest, because I'm now doing something I'm passionate about. Whereas when I was a headhunter, I wasn't passionate about headhunting, but I was passionate and ruthless and competitive around making sure that I was going to be the best headhunter on the planet and earning all the money that went along with it. So completely different situation, but kind of resulting in similarities in the amount of work I do. It's just that working in the academy is a joy, and therefore it's a joy to people around me. And when I was a headhunter, it wasn't a joy to anyone.
For anybody. Well, I did read the stat. I don't know how true it is. I don't know how old your daughters are, but are they over 18?
They're 17, 27 and 28.
Okay. And so I read a stat during the week, which just filled me with dread. My youngest is 12. And 80% of your time that you spend with your children are until they're 18. Because I'm sure they're not around. Just what you said, they're there today, but no.
I completely agree. I now think I spend much more quality time with my older two, because they were very young. They grew up while I was in that environment, and I was never psychologically there. I'm fortunate that my husband is a house husband, and he's incredible. And so he kind of brought them up while I was going off being stressed and melting down in the corner. And now that they're older and they've flown the nest, and one of them's getting married this year.
Oh, wow.
The time that I now spend with them is very, very special. And I am managing to spend a little bit more time with my youngest, but I do travel a lot.
Do you?
So I travel a lot from around Australia and the US. But as we grow, which may be organically, but as we grow, that will enable a little bit more funding. We'll be able to build in the infrastructure within the academy. We've already hired a UK and EMEA MD back end of last year, which is phenomenal for me. She loves it. The team love her. And that's what enabled me to launch the APAC fellowship program, because I knew I'd have the headspace to be able to do that, given the role that she's done. So as the academy gets bigger, I'll be able to bring in more of an infrastructure. We're a very small team.
Yeah, how big is the team?
We employ 10 people, and 6 of them are part-time.
No.
So It is a really tiny team. And but as we grow, we may be able to invest more in hiring talent within the business, and that will alleviate a little bit more of my time from the traveling. That's the ultimate goal.
Australia's not the worst place in the world to travel to, though. That's all I'm going to.
It's heaven on earth. It is my spiritual homeland.
Oh, okay. You and me both. I adore it. I absolutely, I would.
It's been a joy. And the people that Australia brought into my life, oh my God. I've literally got friends for life that Australia brought into my life. And so I haven't stayed at a hotel or an Airbnb there for 6 years. Brilliant. Because whenever I go, I'm staying with my Aussie family and surrounded by love and loads of people. And it's all really energetic because I don't go there very often. It's bliss. I'm sorry. We'll do another one about Australia. Thank you so much for your time. One very last question. Funding, and where is your funding coming from? Is it corporate sponsors? And I mean, God forbid somebody listening to this going, I can fund the Marketing Academy. Yeah, if you can fund the virtual campus, that would be amazing. The sponsors are predominantly big corporate. So our biggest global sponsor, and they sponsor all 11 programs, including the virtual campus, is Salesforce. In the UK, it's companies like ITV, BT, PhD, Mars, KFC, Accenture Song, Bazaar Voice. Down in Australia, it's brands in Australia such as the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, IAG, which is the biggest insurance company, Deloitte, Google. Google have supported us in Australia for 9 years. In the States, it's people like the Wall Street Journal, but KFC support in the States as well, Mars support in the States as well as the UK. So they tend to be large brands or agencies. So Dentsu is the sponsor in Australia, for example. They're attracted to the Academy because obviously we stand for good in the industry. So they're very, very keen to partner with an organisation that's so passionate, advocating talent in the marketing world, but also, you know, it's an excellent community, and our community outside of the 1,050 fellows, alumni, is huge, and they love that we enable them to invest in their own talent, especially through the virtual campus. We used to do lectures for them, but now they're all enrolled their people all over the world on the virtual campus. And it's not a huge amount of money. There's different levels. Because there's different. So you can sponsor the virtual campus as, you know, just one sponsor. You can sponsor the scholarship program, the fellowship program, and the alumni programs. So Snap, for example, Snap sponsor our fellowship alumni programs in both regions. So they're different. So we've got different brands in different programs, but without them, we wouldn't exist. Yeah, they're what provides all of the funding for us to keep all of the wheels on all of the programs, and then everything else is donated. You know, we have to pay for the venues and all of that stuff and all of the flights and everything, but all of the actual learning is gifted.
There has to be an airline out there that would sponsor you. There has to be a hotel group. I used to work in fundraising, so I have no shame.
we did have Delta Airlines were the first sponsor in the US. And then their CMO left, and their CMO that was there loved it, and their new CMO went, "What? Well, I don't understand." And so they didn't renew. But yeah, I'm after Emirates. I've got a fellow in Emirates. I'm really after Emirates because that will get us to Australia, and we do loads of flights down there. So, but that is how we're funded, and they were amazing. And it's their funding that enables us to do this for all of these thousands of people.
Wow, it's amazing. And look, hopefully, you know, there may just be someone listening to this that is thinking, get in touch with Sherilyn. Listen, thank you so much for your time today. I took you well over our allotted time. I really appreciate it. You talked about legacy earlier on. I don't need to tell you that you're creating a legacy. And I know, because I've heard you speak in other places, I know this isn't about you, but it takes a force, and, you know, it took you to have that vision. Never mind what happened to get you to the vision.
It's an idea that got supported by many people. That's what makes it what it is.
That's what makes it. Well,
I do at 3 o'clock in the morning. I might think, well, actually, if I died today, it'd be a pretty good day to die. And that is one of my mantras.
Yes. Yeah. What about, honestly, like, it's not a lovely way to think about it. Horrible, you know, I don't want to die, but like, if it was today,
I nearly did. And on the day that happened, I was thinking today would be a really shit day to die. And I made the decision I would never think like that ever again. So it would be a good day to die.
Thank you so much, Sherilyn, for your time.
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Love speaking to you, Colin.
I really hope you enjoyed that episode. I could have spoken to Sherilyn for even longer. She is so engaging and just draws you in with her charm, energy, and authenticity. There's so much I didn't get to ask her, but there's so much I took away from this episode. The need to figure out the 4 quadrants of that Venn diagram are high on my list. Check out the marketingacademy.org if you would like to find out more. And that's it for this episode. Thanks for listening to That's What I Call Marketing. If you did enjoy it, please do share and add comments with your feedback. You can get in touch and find all previous episodes on that'swhatIcallmarketing.com. Follow us on Instagram for some of our shorter videos, That's What I Call Marketing. On Twitter for _marketing, and now you can watch our episodes back on YouTube. Yes, you guessed it, That's What I Call Marketing. So from me, Connor Byrne, until the next episode, take care.